Hi, we are Ethan Clarke and Sofia Mendes. Welcome to Magic in the Mundane.
Yeah, welcome to the deep dive.
Imagine stepping out of your front door right now.
Yeah.
But instead of a quiet sidewalk or, a familiar street, you immediately cross this threshold into absolute chaos.
Right, like total unpredictability.
Exactly. You're suddenly standing in a landscape where the fundamental laws of nature just seem completely broken. I mean, the ground beneath your feet might not even be stable.
Yeah, and the weather is actively, aggressively hostile.
And the very air around you feels like it's reacting to the sudden spike of panic in your chest.
Yeah.
You are instantly, undeniably, at the absolute bottom of the food chain.
It is a complete suspension of safety. You go from this curated, predictable existence directly into an environment that feels like it is, well, actively trying to erase you from the map.
Yeah.
It's a scenario that completely strips away the illusion of human dominance over nature.
And it's a terrifying premise, but that's exactly the reality we are jumping into today. We have designed this exploration entirely for you to help you make sense of a truly wild narrative landscape.
We really have. Today, we've got a fascinating stack of sources in front of us.
We do. We are looking at text excerpts and the incredibly detailed Kirkus review notes for Marc J Gregson's 2024 young adult novel, Sky's End.
The world building in these sources provides a phenomenal text to dig into, especially regarding how environment shapes character.
It really does. Okay, let's unpack this because our mission for you today is to look at how this specific story utilizes that intense world building.
Right, these extreme environments.
Exactly, and a highly unpredictable magic system to craft a gripping narrative.
Oh.
We're looking at how it takes those universal themes we all understand, survival, finding out who you are, searching for a place to belong.
Classic themes, yeah.
Right. And it just drops them into a blender of constant high-stakes danger. Because right out of the gate, the premise sets up a dynamic that feels fundamentally different from your standard coming-of-age story.
What's fascinating here is how the book balances a traditional young adult experience with an incredibly harsh, thoroughly modern take on survival.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because in a lot of classic YA fiction, the protagonist might start in a sleepy village or they're thrust into an adventure relatively safely. The world kind of waits for them to be ready.
Like, here is your sword, have fun.
Exactly. But in Sky's End, the extreme lethal nature of the environment is established before we even fully understand the plot. The setting isn't just a painted backdrop for the characters to stand in front of, it's an active antagonist.
Before we can even touch the magic system or the monsters roaming around, we really have to talk about the literal geography of this place. Because, it dictates every single decision these characters make.
It's everything.
Our sources describe this setting as a fundamentally fragmented landscape. It's broken. Society only manages to exist in these specific, highly isolated, controlled zones.
Right, and everything outside of those zones is unpredictable and deadly.
Reading through these excerpts, it made me think about the sheer suffocating claustrophobia of that setup. Living in these controlled zones is exactly like living inside a pressurized airlock on a hostile alien planet.
That is a great analogy. You have the illusion of normalcy inside that enclosure. People are, going about their day, establishing routines, creating social hierarchies.
Going to work, having dinner.
Yeah. But the tension comes from the constant underlying awareness that just inches away, beyond that literal or metaphorical bulkhead, is an environment that will snuff you out in seconds if the seal breaks.
Right. You can never truly relax. And our main character starts as an outsider who doesn't fully belong to any group inside these tightly controlled zones.
They are completely on the fringes of this already precarious society.
But here's where I want to push back a little bit on the traditional interpretation of that trope.
Let's look at it.
If you are an outsider,
Yeah.
someone who is marginalized, someone who isn't comfortable or entirely protected by the soft, cozy interior of that pressurized airlock, doesn't starting as a total outcast actually give this protagonist a massive survival advantage?
How do you mean?
They aren't softened by the safety of the controlled zones. They already know how to scrape by, how to watch their own back, how to endure deprivation. Isn't that grit a huge edge when they inevitably have to face the fragmented world outside?
Well, on a purely physical level, sure. They possess a gritty hypervigilance that the comfortable, insulated citizens of the controlled zones just lack.
Right.
But focusing solely on their physical toughness completely ignores the immense psychological weight of the setting. The sources highlight that the protagonist's journey revolves around survival, yes, but equally around adaptation and the search for belonging.
Okay.
When you start as an outsider, you lack a crucial psychological anchor.
Wait, you need a psychological anchor just to survive the weather.
You need it to survive the reality of the isolation. Survival in an environment this extreme requires far more than just physical endurance or quick
Or a
reflexes.
high pain tolerance.
Exactly. It requires a fundamental reason to keep going when every instinct is telling you to just give up. When you belong to a society, even a deeply flawed one, inside a controlled zone, you have a baseline identity.
You were part of a collective.
Yes. You have people to protect or traditions to uphold. This protagonist's initial lack of belonging fuels their core motivation because they aren't just trying to keep their heart beating, they're constantly searching for their identity.
Wow, okay.
In a world that is physically fragmented, if you don't know who you are or where you fit in, the environment won't just kill you, it will hollow you out psychologically first.
So the physical fragmentation of the world, these isolated pockets of safety surrounded by utter chaos, is actually serving as a mirror for the protagonist's internal fragmentation. They are socially and emotionally fractured. They don't have a solid piece of ground to stand on, figuratively or literally.
The brilliance of this setup is that the character is forced to build their identity simultaneously with learning how to survive the literal wilderness. They cannot do one without the other.
They're completely intertwined.
Yeah. To survive the fragmented world, they have to become a whole person.
Because the protagonist lacks that societal anchor, they can't just hide forever in the shadows of the controlled zones. They're eventually forced out into the raw elements, which means they immediately collide with the world's most dangerous variable, the magic system.
Oh, the magic system is fascinating.
Let's look at the natural laws of Sky's End, because this isn't your grandfather's fantasy magic.
It is decidedly not. The traditional mechanics of fantasy magic are entirely absent here.
The sources are very clear on this detail. Magic exists, but it is not fully understood by the people using it. It is intrinsically tied to the environment, and it reacts to conditions, emotions, and external factors.
It's wild.
It is not easily controlled. Honestly, when I was reviewing the notes for this deep dive, I had to completely throw out the typical wizard with a wand fantasy trope.
Oh, yeah. The idea of an academic studying ancient spells in a tower and reciting Latin to make fire appear simply does not apply. Magic here isn't a tool you pick up and put down.
In Sky's End, utilizing magic feels less like waving a wand and more like trying to sail a ship through a Category 5 hurricane.
That's a good way to put it.
You cannot command the wind. You can't tell the ocean what to do or demand that the waves stop crashing. You can only read the environment, frantically adjust your sails, and react to the immense forces churning around you.
Yeah, you are constantly negotiating with the magic, not dominating it. It is a reactive magic system rather than a commanding one. You are a participant in a chaotic ecosystem, not the master of it.
But I'm looking at this specific detail in the Kirkus review about the magic reacting to human emotions, and I have a major question about the logistics of that.
Sure.
If the ambient magic in the environment violently reacts to your emotional state, doesn't that make the protagonist's own fear or their anger their absolute biggest liability in a life or death situation?
Absolutely.
Like if you are facing down a terrifying, lethal threat and your natural biological human terror accidentally triggers a magical environmental response like the air catching fire because you're scared, aren't you just actively making things worse for yourself?
This raises an important question, and it really gets to the heart of why Marc J Gregson's magic system is such a brilliant narrative device. Fear and anger are massive, almost suicidal liabilities here, and that is exactly the point.
Wait, so the author just built a massive handicap into the world?
It is a mechanism for forced evolution. Think about the structure of most action-driven stories. A protagonist typically levels up by getting physically stronger, or finding a legendary weapon, or learning a secret martial arts technique.
Right, the typical training montage.
Exactly, but if the magic around you is volatile and reacts directly to your internal state, the only way to level up is through extreme emotional regulation. The magic system forces the protagonist to evolve emotionally in order to survive physically.
Wow. I mean, imagine your own pulse right now as you listen to this. Think about how your body reacts when someone cuts you off in traffic, or when you miss a step going down the stairs.
That stomach drop feeling.
Yeah, that sudden spike of adrenaline. If you are standing in the fragmented zone and your heart rate spiked from normal human anxiety, the environment would weaponize that against you.
It's terrifying.
That is the level of emotional regulation we are talking about here. You can't just hack and slash your way out of a problem. If you lose your temper, the world literally turns against you.
The magic system demands total self-awareness. It ties perfectly back to their status as an outsider searching for identity. To navigate the magic, you have to master yourself.
You can't fake it.
No, you have to deeply understand your own fear, acknowledge your own anger, and learn to process those emotions in real time while you are in mortal danger. It elevates the conflict from mere physical combat to intense psychological warfare with oneself.
It is incredibly stressful to even think about, but it makes for absolutely fantastic reading. And it's not just abstract magical weather or volatile air they have to worry about.
No, the fauna is a whole other issue.
Right. The world outside the controlled zones is populated by a terrifying variety of creatures, both natural and magical. Our source notes mention that some of these creatures are imminent, deadly threats, while others are tied to deeper mysteries in the world.
And the protagonist has to learn to distinguish between them to survive.
Right, but in a traditional narrative, a monster is usually just a roadblock, right? Like a test of physical strength to overcome before moving to the next chapter.
Usually, yes. But here, the fauna serves a critical dual purpose. Yes, some are apex predators that will end the protagonist's journey immediately, but others are vital clues.
Clues to what?
They are the primary mechanisms for uncovering the hidden dangers and the forgotten history of this fragmented landscape.
But how does that actually work in practice? When I first read that they were clues, my mind went to a cliché analogy like exploring a jungle and not knowing if a brightly colored frog is poisonous, or if its venom is the exact cure you need for a disease.
Like trial and error.
Yeah, just basic trial and error. But based on the reactive magic we just discussed, it seems vastly more complex than that.
Oh, it's far more intricate than trial and error. It's less like exploring a jungle and more like trying to debug a complex piece of alien software.
Okay, I love that analogy.
The creatures are essentially nodes in a massive reactive network. For example, if the protagonist observes a specific beast interacting with a localized magical storm, perhaps the creature's migration pattern perfectly threads the needle through dangerous, volatile pockets of air that isn't just a neat biological fact.
Right.
That creature is physically demonstrating a hidden law of physics in this world. By watching it, the protagonist learns a vulnerability in the environment, or a safe path, or how to shield themselves from that specific type of magical fallout.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So by watching the ecosystem, they are literally reading the instruction manual for the magic system.
Exactly.
The creatures aren't just living in the world. They are expressions of the world's natural laws. If you trigger one creature, it might set off a cascading ecological response that reveals the hidden coding of the fragmented landscape.
You really have to observe, adapt, and respect the ecosystem, rather than just treating the outside world as a monster shooting gallery.
Right. That respect for the environment is paramount. By learning to distinguish between a threat and a mystery, the protagonist is learning the deeper language of the environment itself.
They are moving from being a victim of the landscape to being a student of it.
Which naturally causes the scope of the entire story to explode. Because the protagonist is adapting, they're learning to regulate their emotions to navigate the magic, they're deciphering the ecological software of the creatures, and suddenly they're wielding real influence.
Yeah, the stakes get much higher.
The sources note that the journey starts with a simple personal survival goal. But as the protagonist grows and adapts, their influence naturally cascades. What begins as a desperate personal quest expands into a massive macro-level conflict.
Their actions begin to influence the broader events between the controlled zones and the fragmented world. It is a classic snowball effect, but one that is entirely earned through painful psychological and physical adaptation.
They don't just stumble into power.
No, they adapt into it.
So what does this all mean? The pacing of all this is described in the Kirkus reviews as highly action-driven, combining constant exploration with conflict and maintaining tension throughout the entire book.
It's very fast-paced.
The world building creates a massive sense of scale and danger. But I have to admit, looking at all these giant set pieces, the volatile magic exploding, the intense emotional regulation under fire, the massive monster fights, my immediate fear is action fatigue.
Sure, like the deep themes get lost.
Yeah, do these quiet, profound themes of identity and finding a place to belong just get totally buried under the pyrotechnics?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of what the author is actually doing with the narrative structure, The action and the extreme environment aren't distractions from the emotional themes. They're the themes in motion.
Explain that, because it sounds like a contradiction. How can a giant monster fight be a quiet theme of identity?
Think of the action as a crucible. The action sequences aren't just pyrotechnics meant to keep the reader's heart rate up or provide cheap thrills. Because of how the world is built, specifically because the magic is intensely reactive to human emotions. Every single action scene is fundamentally a pass-or-fail test of the protagonist's internal emotional growth.
Right. Because they literally cannot survive the physical monster fight unless they maintain that psychological regulation we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The external conflict and the internal conflict are inextricably linked. The constant physical danger serves to highlight the character's emotional evolution.
Okay, I see.
Consider the difference between a fight early in the book versus later on. When the protagonist faces a massive threat in Chapter 10, their ability to control the reactive magic around them reveals their emotional maturity and self-acceptance compared to their panicked, chaotic responses in Chapter 1.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The explosions and monster fights don't drown out the theme of identity. They are the exact visible mechanisms forging that identity. It is a thoroughly modern twist on the traditional young adult adventure, where the setting itself acts as the ultimate, unforgiving judge of the character's personal growth.
That is such an incredibly satisfying way to construct a narrative. The environment isn't just a cool aesthetic backdrop, it's the central element holding the protagonist accountable.
It demands growth.
If they haven't grown emotionally, if they haven't figured out a piece of who they are, the environment will literally reflect that failure back at them through the reactive magic. It makes perfect sense why the world building is highlighted as such a massive strength in the review notes.
It ensures that the action is always deeply meaningful to the character's arc. The protagonist's shift from an isolated, terrified outsider to someone whose actions actually influence the fate of the broader, fragmented world is earned every single step of the way by their mastery of this hostile environment.
They earn their place in the world by finally understanding it.
Exactly.
To distill all of these insights down for you, the listener, Sky's End really serves as a masterclass in using a harsh setting and unpredictable reactive magic to force a character's evolution. It completely flips the script on traditional fantasy tropes.
It really does.
In this fragmented world, true power doesn't come from waving a wand and demanding absolute control over your surroundings. True power comes from absolute adaptation. You survive by changing yourself, not by trying to change the world.
It is entirely about learning to listen to the storm rather than just yelling at it.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one lingering idea that wasn't explicitly spelled out in the review notes, but it has been bothering me in a good way based on everything we've unpacked.
Oh, what's that?
The sheer scale of the hostility in this world feels almost personal. Why is the environment so aggressively out to get them?
Consider this. What if the magic isn't actually chaotic or wild at all? What if this extreme environment, the fragmented landscapes, the volatile magic, the monstrous fauna average? What if all of it is actually the planet's own immune system?
Oh, wow. So the fragmented world isn't actually broken, it's defending itself.
It completely recontextualizes the whole struggle. If the environment is an immune response, it views the humans hiding in those rigid, controlled zones not as victims, but as a virus trying to conquer and dominate the ecosystem.
That is wild.
It means the protagonist isn't just fighting to survive a harsh landscape. They might have to prove to the world itself that they can be a symbiont rather than an infection.
Are the humans the survivors, or are they the disease? It's an incredible paradigm shift, something for you to mull over and explore as you dive into this world for yourself. Thank you so much for joining us as we stepped out of the airlock and into the storm today. See you next week.
Flip the page, here we go.